When an empath suddenly falls silent, most people often misinterpret this withdrawal, assuming they've simply given up or are shutting down. However, Carl Jung uncovered a phenomenon far more profound, and indeed more unsettling. This isn't a sign of weakness, rather, it's a powerful psychological warning shot. Jung termed it the introversion of libido, describing a process where an individual's psychic energy recedes from the external world to intensely process their reality internally. What appears outwardly as silence is, in fact, the empath's consciousness undertaking an exhaustive internal audit. And once this deep inner examination concludes, the relationship at hand will irrevocably be transformed. Most individuals completely overlook these critical warning signs. They dismiss the empath's quietness as mere moodiness, fatigue, or a simple need for space. Yet, Jung understood that when an empath retreats into silence, they've entered what he called observation mode. During this phase, their customary emotional filter is meticulously removed, and their personal projections, the positive qualities they've attributed to others, are consciously withdrawn. For the first time, they are seeing you exactly as you are, stripped of the softening lens of their own inherent compassion. And once an empath truly perceives you without these self-imposed projections, that stark clarity can never be unseen. Society often trains us to fear confrontation and shy away from drama. So, when an empath chooses silence instead of engaging in a fight, toxic individuals frequently celebrate. They mistakenly believe they've won, convinced the empath has been broken, defeated, and finally trained into submission. However, Jung's extensive research unveiled a truth that should truly terrify manipulators everywhere. This silence is not surrender. It is the unnerving calm that precedes a psychological storm they are utterly incapable of comprehending. Because while they are reveling in their apparent victory, the empath is engaged in something far more potent and dangerous: profound internal thought and re-evaluation. The precise moment an empath retracts their projections signifies a monumental shift in consciousness. Jung dedicated decades of his clinical practice to studying this very phenomenon, repeatedly observing a distinct pattern emerge across numerous cases. Consider a composite illustration built from these recurring patterns Jung documented. An empathic individual, habitually giving and accommodating, would eventually reach a breaking point. But instead of the anticipated emotional breakdown, something remarkably different transpired. They would become preternaturally calm. Their eyes would acquire a newfound depth, their voice would flatten, and everyone in their vicinity would instinctively sense that something profound and irreversible had taken place. Jung named this process withdrawing projections, and he regarded it as one of the most powerful psychological transformations a person could ever undergo. When we project onto others, we are essentially lending them our own positive attributes. We perceive them not as they truly are, but as we idealistically wish them to be. We ascribe motivations to them that originate solely within our own hearts. We even excuse behaviors in them that we would never tolerate in ourselves, all because we are unconsciously projecting our own intrinsic goodness onto their character. The empath, unknowingly, has been doing this their entire life, habitually loaning out their profound compassion, their unwavering integrity, their boundless kindness, and in turn, genuinely believing that others inherently possess these very same qualities. But then, when an empath goes quiet, those deeply embedded projections are sharply called back home. Suddenly, they are no longer perceiving you through the soft, hopeful filter of who they wished you were. Instead, they are seeing you through the stark, unyielding clarity of who you actually are. Your subtle manipulations, which they previously excused as simple misunderstandings, now become glaringly obvious patterns of behavior. Your falsehoods, which they so desperately wanted to believe, transform into transparent contradictions. Your selfishness, which they tirelessly tried to justify, becomes undeniable exploitation. And once an empath perceives this reality with such unwavering clarity, no amount of charm, tears, or empty promises can ever restore the shattered illusion. The silence itself is the tangible manifestation of this intense internal process. While the empath sits quietly, appearing passive and even defeated to external observers, their mind is operating at a level most people seldom access. They are replaying years of memories, but this time, critically, without the emotional filter that once made those painful memories tolerable. Every single conversation is being meticulously re-examined. Every flimsy excuse is being ruthlessly re-evaluated. Every instance when their intuition screamed danger, a warning they tragically silenced for your comfort or peace, is now being reviewed with brutal, unflinching honesty. Jung vividly described this as the psychological accountant going through the books and realizing the numbers have never added up. The empath is now connecting dots they had previously ignored or rationalized away. The pervasive pattern of betrayals, once excused as mere accidents, now reveals itself as a calculated and deliberate strategy. The moments when you deliberately made them feel irrational or crazy for trusting their own perceptions are now exposed as clear instances of gaslighting. The times you accused them of being too sensitive are unequivocally recognized as manipulative attempts to make them doubt their highly accurate readings of your behavior. And with each devastating realization, the depth of their silence only intensifies. What renders this transformative process so incredibly powerful is the sheer, overwhelming exhaustion that inevitably precedes it. Jung astutely observed that empaths don't suddenly arrive at this breaking point. Rather, they reach it after years, sometimes decades, of what modern psychology now terms compassion fatigue. They have absorbed an immense amount of pain, carried an unbearable emotional weight, and made countless excuses for the bad behavior of others. Eventually, their entire system unequivocally declares enough. As trauma researchers now profoundly understand, the body keeps the score. And when an empath's body has absorbed more pain than it can possibly metabolize, it forcibly initiates a shutdown that the conscious mind might otherwise have endlessly avoided. This profound exhaustion manifests in subtle yet pervasive ways that frequently go unrecognized. The empath becomes physically tired in a way that no amount of sleep can alleviate. They feel emotionally numb, yet simultaneously, paradoxically, utterly overwhelmed. They begin to withdraw from activities they once genuinely enjoyed, not because they've lost interest, but because they simply have no energy left after giving it all away. Their friends may notice they are not themselves anymore. Their body sends desperate signals through persistent headaches, debilitating digestive issues, or chronic unexplained pain. But still, they push forward, believing they just need to try harder, be better, give more, until one day they simply can't. The system crashes, and in the profound stillness of that crash, the silence begins. This is not a conscious, deliberate choice the empath makes. It is an involuntary, instinctual protective mechanism, the psyche's ultimate emergency shutdown to prevent a complete psychological collapse. The empath hasn't chosen to go quiet. Their nervous system has chosen it for them, finally recognizing what their conscious mind desperately refused to acknowledge, that continuing to engage at the previous level will inevitably result in permanent and irreparable damage. Empaths at this stage are not broken. They are alchemists in the midst of a profound transformation. This is precisely why a manipulator's usual tactics become utterly ineffective during the silence. They instinctively try to provoke a reaction, accustomed as they are to the empath's predictable emotional responsiveness. They might manufacture a crisis, fully expecting the empath to rush in and rescue them, as always. They may deploy guilt, playing on the empath's ingrained tendency to absorb blame. But something fundamental has irrevocably shifted. The empath has entered what Jung called the incubation phase, and during this critical period, they are mysteriously immune to the very manipulations that once controlled and defined them. Jung firmly believed that profound transformation happens in darkness and silence. Just as seeds germinate hidden deep underground and butterflies metamorphose in the quiet confines of their cocoons, empaths undergo their most significant psychological evolution within the quiet withdrawal from relationships that have systematically drained them. During this sacred silence, the empath isn't merely contemplating past events. They are actively becoming someone entirely new. They are courageously integrating their shadow, those parts of themselves that society, and often their own upbringing, taught them to reject. For the vast majority of their lives, empaths have been praised for being nice, accommodating, understanding, and endlessly forgiving. They have meticulously built their entire identity around being the person who cares, who helps, who never abandons others. But this very identity inadvertently required them to suppress and reject crucial facets of their authentic selves: their capacity for healthy coldness, their ability to be selectively indifferent, and their absolute right to establish boundaries so rigid they might permanently exclude toxic individuals. Their shadow contains all these essential, formerly denied qualities, and during the silence, they are finally accepting them. This profound shadow integration is precisely what renders the transformation permanent and unyielding. The empath isn't merely taking a temporary break or superficially processing their feelings. They are fundamentally restructuring their entire personality to embrace and include aspects of themselves they have consciously denied their entire lives. They are accepting that they can indeed be kind without being weak, compassionate without being naive, and loving without being exploitable. And this newfound acceptance radically changes everything about how they present themselves and interact with the world. The process of shadow integration is by no means comfortable. It demands that the empath confront aspects of themselves they have been conditioned to believe are unacceptable. They must bravely acknowledge that they are capable of saying no without needing any explanation, that they can witness someone's pain without automatically assuming responsibility for fixing it, that they possess the inherent right to prioritize their own well-being over someone else's comfort, and that they can be ruthlessly honest about what they will and will not tolerate in their lives. These powerful realizations often feel intensely selfish at first, precisely because the empath has been rigorously conditioned to equate selflessness with virtue. But Jung understood that this so-called selfishness is, in reality, a vital sign of burgeoning psychological health. The empath is painstakingly learning to distinguish between genuine, healthy compassion and compulsive, self-sacrificing caretaking, between authentic, reciprocal connection and debilitating codependent enmeshment, between true, unconditional love and tragic self-abandonment. And these critical distinctions necessitate that they embrace qualities they've previously rejected: the ability to be cold when coldness is warranted, detached when detachment is protective, and indifferent when indifference is the only sane and self-preserving response to persistent dysfunction. Many people commonly mistake this silence for the silent treatment, a manipulative tactic deliberately employed to punish others. However, Jung was exceptionally clear about the crucial distinction. The silent treatment is inherently about control and retaliation. It is implicitly saying, "I am going to withhold communication until you submit to my demands." But the Jungian silence is fundamentally different. It is not designed to punish the other person, nor is it even primarily about the other person at all. It is an act of profound self-preservation, the psyche's emergency shutdown mechanism to prevent further damage while it diligently repairs what has been broken. The empath is not attempting to make you feel bad during this period of silence. They are not plotting revenge or meticulously planning how to hurt you. They are simply too utterly exhausted to perform empathy anymore. The heavy mask of endless understanding has become too burdensome to wear. The demanding role of emotional shock absorber has completely depleted their vital energy. And in the absence of the energy required to maintain these draining patterns, they become still, not as a calculated strategy, but as an undeniable biological necessity. What truly terrifies manipulators during this silence is something they deeply feel but cannot adequately articulate. They instinctively sense that their crucial energy supply has been abruptly severed. For months, or even years, they have been parasitically feeding on the empath's boundless emotional responsiveness. Every time they deliberately created drama, the empath reacted. Every time they desperately craved validation, the empath unfailingly provided it. Every time they dumped their emotional garbage, the empath diligently processed it for them. This exploitative exchange became so utterly reliable that manipulators built their entire psychological economy around it. But now, the empath has gone dark, and the manipulator experiences this sudden absence like an addict suffering severe withdrawal. They cannot rationally explain why this silence bothers them so intensely. After all, they frequently claim to want the empath to shut up, to stop being so sensitive, to quit making everything so complicated. But now that they have the silence they supposedly desired, they are utterly desperate to break it. Because this pervasive silence means they have irrevocably lost access to something they were utterly and parasitically dependent on. We can clearly observe this dynamic in a compelling narrative illustration that Jung's theory helps us fully grasp. Imagine someone who has spent countless years in a relationship where their profound emotional availability was ruthlessly exploited. Every boundary they courageously attempted to set was met with indignant accusations of being cold or unloving. Every time they articulated their hurt, they were dismissively told they were too sensitive. Every instance of neglect or outright mistreatment was cleverly reframed as their fault for expecting too much. Over a prolonged period, they tragically learned to silence their own legitimate needs, to profoundly doubt their own accurate perceptions, and to accommodate behavior that fundamentally violated their deepest values. Then comes the moment of shattering clarity. Perhaps it's a final, undeniable betrayal that simply cannot be rationalized away. Perhaps it's merely the relentless accumulation of thousands of tiny, insidious wounds finally reaching a critical mass. Whatever the trigger, the empath suddenly perceives the entire relationship with devastating, unvarnished clarity. And in that precise moment, something deep inside them goes quiet. Not the dramatic silence of slamming doors and angry declarations, but the eerie, profound calm of someone who has fundamentally and irrevocably altered their relationship to the situation. This is precisely the silence that Jung identified as truly transformative. The empath ceases arguing their perspective because they no longer need the other person to validate their reality. They stop explaining their feelings because they have unequivocally accepted that some people simply cannot or will not ever understand. They stop defending their boundaries because they have realized that boundaries do not require the other person's agreement to be inherently valid. In essence, they stop participating in a dynamic that compulsively requires them to constantly justify their fundamental right to be treated with basic respect. Jung extensively studied what he termed participation mystique, the unconscious identification with others, where the distinct boundaries between self and other become profoundly blurred. Many empaths, unfortunately, live their entire lives in this state, tragically unable to distinguish where they truly end and others begin. They feel what others feel so intensely that they mistakenly perceive others' emotions as their own. They absorb others' problems so completely that they forget they didn't create them, and they take responsibility for others' happiness so totally that they systematically sacrifice their own well-being in the process. The silence, in its essence, represents the breaking of this debilitating participation mystique. For the very first time, the empath is authentically experiencing themselves as a separate, distinct being with their own legitimate feelings, unique needs, and inherent rights. They are not merging with your emotional state. They are not attempting to fix your problems. They are not taking responsibility for your reactions. They are simply sitting quietly in their own consciousness, experiencing what it truly feels like to exist as a sovereign individual, rather than as a mere extension of everyone else's needs. This profound reclamation of individual identity is precisely why the silence feels so incredibly powerful to everyone involved. The empath experiences a liberating sense of wholeness they have never felt before. Despite the inherent pain of what they are deeply processing, there is a profound, almost spiritual relief in finally putting themselves first. Meanwhile, the manipulator experiences an unexplainable panic, instinctively sensing that something fundamental has irrevocably shifted in the psychological dynamic. They are no longer dealing with someone who will automatically absorb their projections and endlessly accommodate their demands. They are now facing someone who has remembered they are a separate person, endowed with sovereignty over their own life. During this crucial incubation phase, the empath is diligently developing new psychological structures that will robustly support their transformed self. They are meticulously building boundaries where previously there were none. They are cultivating sharp discernment where once there was only uncritical acceptance. They are meticulously fostering selective empathy where previously they indiscriminately gave their compassion to all. And most importantly, they are bravely accepting their own darkness, their inherent capacity to be cold, detached, and unapologetically self-protective when the situation unequivocally requires it. This is the very shadow integration Jung believed was absolutely essential for true psychological wholeness. The empath is no longer striving to be solely light, solely love, or solely forgiveness. They are becoming a complete, multidimensional human being who contains multitudes. They can be warmly affectionate with those who genuinely deserve warmth, and as ice-cold as necessary with those who have definitively proven themselves untrustworthy. They can be generously giving with those who reciprocate and utterly withholding from those who only take. They can be deeply understanding with those who are genuinely trying and mercilessly realistic about those who are deliberately manipulating. What makes this transformation so utterly complete is that the empath is not merely performing these new behaviors as a calculated strategy. They are not pretending to have boundaries while secretly hoping you'll prove them wrong. They are not setting limits as a test to see if you'll respect them. They have fundamentally changed at the very core of their identity. The person who would have absorbed your bad behavior and made endless excuses for you no longer exists. In their place stands someone who sees you with unwavering clarity and has made profound peace with what they see. When the empath finally speaks again, everyone around them immediately notices that something profound has changed. The voice sounds distinctly different. There is an unmistakable absence of raw emotion. No anger, no palpable hurt, no desperate need to be understood. Just calm, flat statements of fact, delivered with the serene detachment of someone reading a weather report. This is the precise moment when the manipulator realizes they are in serious, irrevocable trouble. Because the empath they knew, the one who could be moved by tears and swayed by empty promises, has been replaced by someone they utterly fail to recognize. Jung meticulously documented this phenomenon across his extensive case studies as what many now refer to as the door slam, though he didn't use that exact terminology. He observed that when empaths reach their ultimate breaking point, they do not gradually pull away or slowly reduce contact. Instead, they execute a clean, surgical cut. One day, you have complete and unfettered access to their emotional world. The next day, you have none. And there is no negotiation, no appeals process, no second chances. The door has closed, and it has been irrevocably welded shut from the inside. This isn't cruelty on the empath's part, though it may undoubtedly feel that way to the person being cut off. It is, purely and simply, survival. The empath has learned through excruciating experience that certain individuals will relentlessly take advantage of any opening, exploit any perceived moment of weakness, and tragically misinterpret any act of kindness as an open invitation to resume old, damaging patterns. So, they have meticulously removed all openings. They have sealed all weaknesses, and they have fundamentally redefined kindness as something they give to themselves first, and to others only if there is a genuine surplus of energy and compassion. The profound shift from being an emotional shock absorber to becoming an indifferent observer is now complete. The empath, who once used to feel everything, now feels absolutely nothing when it comes to you. Not hatred, not anger, not even a trace of disappointment. Just the cool, impersonal neutrality of someone who has decisively filed you under concluded business and unequivocally moved on. And this profound neutrality is far more final and devastating than any heated argument or tearful confrontation could ever be. Because when an empath completely stops feeling anything about you, you have, in essence, become psychologically irrelevant to them. This is precisely what makes the silence so utterly terrifying for those who fundamentally depended on the empath's emotional availability. They desperately keep waiting for the explosion, the dramatic confrontation, the scene where all the pent-up hurt comes pouring out, but it never comes. Instead, they are met with this eerie calm, this unsettling distance, this pervasive sense that they are talking to someone who has already emotionally left the building, even though they are standing right in front of them. The empath has departed emotionally long before they make any physical exit, and the profound silence was, in truth, the sound of them packing their bags. Jung believed this entire process represented the regaining of profound psychological sovereignty. The empath has meticulously reclaimed all the power they unconsciously gave away through years of over-functioning, over-giving, and ceaselessly over-accommodating. They've definitively taken back their emotional energy from people who consistently wasted it. They've withdrawn their vital projections from those who never truly deserved them. And they have firmly established themselves as the sole authority over their own inner world, adamantly refusing to let others' opinions or reactions dictate their reality anymore. For the empath experiencing this profound transformation, the silence is sacred. It is the hallowed space where they finally remember who they truly are beneath all the roles they diligently played for others' comfort. It is where they finally hear their own authentic voice after years of amplifying everyone else's. It is where they feel their own genuine feelings without the distracting static of others' emotional broadcasts drowning them out. And it is where they make the pivotal decision that will irrevocably change the trajectory of their entire life. The decision to trust their own perceptions completely and to act on them without apology. If you are the one who has gone quiet, trust this sacred process. Do not let anyone rush you back into communication before you are truly ready. Do not let misplaced guilt compel you to break your silence merely to soothe someone else's discomfort with it. And do not let the fear of being perceived as cold or mean force you to explain yourself before you have fully completed your deep internal work. This silence is your cocoon, and you are entitled to remain within it until you have fully transformed. Anyone who genuinely cares about your well-being will inherently respect your profound need for this crucial space. The silence also teaches you something absolutely crucial about the nature of relationships. The people who genuinely deserve access to you will patiently wait for you to be ready. They won't manufacture crises to force you to respond. They won't guilt-trip you for taking care of yourself. They won't spread rumors about you being difficult or dramatic. They will simply hold sacred space for your process, trusting that you will return when and if it is truly right for you. And the people who cannot do this will unequivocally reveal their true nature through their reaction to your silence. Jung observed that the awakened empath becomes a living mirror that reflects reality without distortion. They no longer soften the truth to make it palatable. They no longer feel compelled to protect others from the natural consequences of their actions. And they no longer perform exhaustive emotional labor to maintain relationships that systematically drain them. This profound mirror quality makes authentic people feel safe and deeply seen, while inauthentic people feel uncomfortably exposed and unnerved. The empath doesn't have to consciously do anything to create this powerful effect. Their very presence, grounded in their reclaimed sovereignty, achieves it automatically. The transformation is truly complete when the empath realizes they are no longer seeking external validation from others. They trust their own perceptions so completely that others' attempts to gaslight them simply bounce off harmlessly. They value their own judgment so highly that others' opinions become merely interesting data points rather than determining factors. And they honor their own needs so consistently that others' demands for self-sacrifice are met with serene refusal. They have become, in Jung's profound words, individuated, a whole, complete person who doesn't need others to complete them, but can connect authentically and deeply with those who have also done their own inner work. This transformation does not imply that the empath becomes cold or disconnected from humanity. Rather, it signifies that they become selectively warm, consciously choosing where to direct their considerable gifts of empathy and compassion. They still feel deeply, care genuinely, and love powerfully. But now, these precious resources flow exclusively toward people and causes that truly deserve them. They have learned that indiscriminate compassion often enables dysfunction, while strategic and discerning compassion genuinely promotes growth. And they have made profound peace with being labeled selfish by people who consistently benefited from their previous self-neglect. The awakened empath develops what Jung called psychological discernment, the innate ability to accurately assess who is genuinely safe to be vulnerable with and who will inevitably exploit that vulnerability. They learn to recognize the crucial difference between someone merely having a bad day and someone possessing a bad character, between someone making genuine mistakes and someone making deliberate, harmful choices, between someone who is truly struggling and someone who is expertly manipulating. This invaluable discernment protects them from inadvertently repeating old, damaging patterns while still allowing them to remain open to genuine, healthy connection. Have you ever experienced this sudden, profound silence where everything within you became crystal clear? Where the mental fog that once obscured your vision finally lifted, and you saw your relationships exactly as they were, entirely stripped of the distortions of hope or fear? That overwhelming clarity is your consciousness bravely trying to protect you, trying to break through years of conditioning that taught you to doubt your own innate perceptions. If you find yourself in that silence right now, know that you are absolutely not alone. You are part of a universal pattern Jung identified across his extensive work, a powerful pattern of psychological evolution that irrevocably transforms those who have been exploited into sovereign beings who can no longer be manipulated. The paramount question isn't whether to trust this silence. The question is whether you will truly honor what it is so powerfully revealing to you. Will you act decisively on the clarity you are receiving, Or will you talk yourself back into old, comfortable, yet damaging patterns because profound change feels scary? Will you courageously maintain the boundaries your silence is helping you establish, or will you let guilt erode them the moment someone cries? Will you wholeheartedly trust that the inherent discomfort of transformation is infinitely more valuable than the familiar grip of dysfunction? Comment below with the words, "I am listening," or "I am watching," to affirm your unwavering commitment to trusting your own perceptions. Let this be your solemn declaration that you're done silencing your intuition for others' comfort, that you're done explaining away glaring red flags because you desperately want to believe in people's potential, that you're done setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your silence is speaking volumes, and it is finally time to trust what it is so urgently telling you. The empath's silence isn't an ending. It is, in fact, a magnificent beginning. It is the inaugural chapter of a life finally lived on your own authentic terms, guided by your own deeply held values, and powerfully protected by boundaries you no longer feel the need to apologize for. It is the precise moment you cease being what others need you to be and boldly start being who you actually are. And that authenticity, that unwavering sovereignty, that profound self-possession, that's what Jung believed was the ultimate, majestic goal of all psychological development. Not perfection, but wholeness. Not endless accommodation, but conscious choice. Not self-sacrifice, but self-respect. There's so much more to discover about how our minds profoundly protect us, how our intuition unerringly guides us, and how our silent knowing often contains more profound truth than all the words we've ever spoken. The empath's silence isn't the end of their story, it is the glorious beginning of their sovereignty. And that's something truly worth paying attention to.